Mom! Someone gave me a Logic file! Many things changed in the world of audio, but one thing remains the same. The DAW wars are still raging. I've been seeing the same question for over 20 years in comments, on forums, and social media. What's the best DAW for metal? And as tireless as this debate might be, some of the answers are just amazing.
When I bought Logic, it sounded clearer than Cubase, but thin. Then years later, I switched back to Logic because, well, it's Logic. Then Studio One came out and it sounded warmer to my ears, like there was saturation on the master bus. It's been my go-to synth version if I'm doing hip-hop. But other genres, I find myself going back to Logic because it has better separation and clarity on the mid-highs to highs. But once it's mixed completely and mastered and listened to headphones and earbuds, the listener can't not never will know which DAW you used. Use the correct tool for the job. Many PT users use Logic and vice versa.
Obviously, that stuff is a little bit crazy, but it's a valid question to ask. What are the pros and cons of all the different DAWs that are out there? After all, you're going to be spending thousands and thousands of hours inside of this software over the course of your career, so you want to make sure that you're making the right choice. So with all that being said, what is the best DAW for metal? The answer is that there's no best DAW. That's kind of like asking what's the best guitar. It's the one that you write the best riffs on, the one that's easiest to play. It's the one that works best for you. But at the same time, they're definitely not all the same, and it does matter which DAW you choose, because there are some very big differences between them, and choosing the wrong one could mean that you waste hundreds of hours over the course of your career, or maybe that you quit making music before your career ever gets started because using the DAW sucks so badly and you didn't realize that there was a better alternative. The key is to find the right DAW for you, which might not be the right DAW for me or for anyone else. I've used a bunch of them over my career. I started with a super basic one called Making Waves in the late 90s, then moved to Fruity Loops, then Acid, then Cubase, then Digital Performer, then Pro Tools. On this most recent European tour for my band Doth, I had to learn Reaper because I needed something rock solid for running our backing tracks live. And when I came home, I started learning Cubase for writing the next Doth album. My point is, they all pretty much do the same stuff, just a little bit differently. Some DAWs just click with my brain, and some, even if I learn them, never feel intuitive. That friction, that feeling of fighting your tools, is the enemy of creativity. The only best DAW is the one that gets out of your way and lets you create. So instead of telling you which one is best, I'm going to break down the real world pros and cons of all the big ones that we see time after time used by students of URM Academy or the pros that come on Nail the Mix, so you can decide for yourself. But before we go any further, please like, share, subscribe. Let's get into it.
Pro Tools fools people to sound better because the top end is bright. People think they're hearing better in Pro Tools when in reality, Pro Tools doesn't reproduce the low 20 to 30 hertz and mid-range the same as Logic Pro. I'm here right now comparing stems with no processing exported with the exact same volume pan info, and Logic is much warmer, and I can hear instruments better in the stereo field. Pro Tools is thinner, and accentuating the top end and the mid-range is missing. I do not like the sound of Pro Tools, even in 2024. It's thin and lifeless in my opinion. I have many veteran producers who have mixed for over 45 years and use Logic for the same reason.
Let's start with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, Pro Tools. For decades, it has been the closest thing to an industry standard, especially in America. If you walk into almost any major professional studio, you're going to see Pro Tools running on their machines. For that reason alone, it's worth knowing your way around it. I feel like everyone should know some basic Pro Tools. It's kind of like learning English. It's the international language of audio production. Even if you don't speak it perfectly, knowing some will help you communicate with more people in more places. The ability to open a session, do some basic navigation, and export tracks will serve you well if you ever find yourself working in a different studio, collaborating with other engineers, or trying to get a job as an assistant. Its biggest strength, without a doubt, is working with audio. Pro Tools was originally designed to mimic the workflow of an analog console, and that DNA is still very much present. It has, by far, the most logical and powerful routing system of any DAW. If you want to use lots of buses, aux tracks, and sends, and have it all work exactly the way you'd expect on a real mixing board, Pro Tools is king. It's incredibly powerful for recording and mixing large, complex sessions with tons of audio tracks. But here's the trade-off. Pro Tools has been and continues to be notoriously unstable. The stability is a real issue. I would never, ever bet a live show on it. I know it would crash. I wouldn't even use Pro Tools for recording a long podcast because I know there's a good chance it would stop with some random error after 15 or 20 minutes. Ask me how I know that. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's a fundamental flaw that can kill a creative moment or even worse, an entire performance. Its other major weakness is MIDI. It's clunky, outdated, and it feels like an afterthought. You can use it. You can do it. But compared to the fluid and intuitive MIDI environments in Logic or Cubase, it's a painful experience. It's just not designed to support a modern loop-based or MIDI-heavy workflow. This is why you'll almost never see it used for soundtrack or game composing, producing hip-hop, or electronic music. So the verdict on Pro Tools? If you're mainly an engineer or producer who's recording and mixing a bunch of live instruments in Pro Studio environments, it's a beast. But if you're a songwriter that does a lot of programming or works with MIDI a lot, or you need something for a live performance, chances are you're going to find it incredibly frustrating.
Okay, so I just bought Logic Pro, and I am truly sorry to say that I like it better than Pro Tools. I hate the fact that I like it better. The reason being very simple as to why I like it better. Everything sounds louder and more in your face and almost pre-mixed inside Logic Pro.
Next up is Cubase, which has been around since the Atari ST days, is a true best of both worlds DAW. It handles both digital audio and MIDI loop-based workflows incredibly well. Steinberg, the company that makes it, actually invented the VST plugin format, so you know its roots in modern production are deep. The stock plugins are phenomenal, the audio editing is great, and features like the built-in pitch correction are top-notch. For a producer or writer who wants to do everything within one piece of software, Cubase is probably the most complete package. The only real weakness, in my opinion, is routing. It's just not as intuitive or powerful as Pro Tools. There's some strangeness in how it handles buses that isn't as logically laid out for someone who's used to an analog style workflow. But make no mistake, you can make fantastic, world-class mixes and productions in Cubase. Lots of people do.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Logic X is not the best for recording guitar because it has a Nevish sort of sound, a bit too dark. Guitar recording in Pro Tools is a little better because it's more SSL-ish, clean with a bit of character. I suppose that's why most mix engineers prefer it for mixing, like the good old days on SSL 4000. Haven't tried Reaper, but I hear it's in between Logic and Pro Tools, sort of Neve/SSL with a bit API thrown in. I say record and mix in the one that gives you the character and vibe that speaks to you.
Then there's Logic Pro. Logic is another powerhouse, and you could argue that it has the best MIDI implementation of any DAW out there. It's a dream for composing with amazing virtual instruments and a workflow that's incredibly intuitive for writers and producers. But, and this is a big but for our world, its audio editing is seriously underpowered. If you're doing a lot of intricate drum editing like we do in metal, Logic is not your friend. It is so clunky that we've literally seen producers who use Logic as their primary DAW, like Will Putney, move over to Pro Tools just to record drums and edit them, and then move all their tracks back to Logic for the rest of the record. All that aside, the other big glaring catch with Logic is that it's Mac only. This is a huge limitation. If you use Windows, it's not even an option. And if you're on a Mac but need to collaborate with someone on a Windows machine, it can be a serious problem. So if you're a songwriter or mixer on a Mac, Logic is fantastic. But if you're an engineer doing a ton of precise drum editing, you might find yourself hitting a wall. Now let's talk about the underdog that a lot of metal guys love.
There will be many arguments, but I feel every DAW have different sounds. Ableton sounds wide, loud, and clear. Bitwig sounds detailed on quiet part, but darker than Ableton. I think Cubase have something like psychoacoustic techniques. It sounds very different. Logic have an artifact on high frequency when it reached the certain point. Mootools Moolab sounds very clear. Sounds like Pro Tools. I didn't like Reaper 4's weak, thin sound, but Reaper 5 have very natural sound. And I really feel FL Studio sounds darker than others. I don't know why, and some of these may be placebo effects, but I feel differences.
Reaper. Reaper has become incredibly popular in the metal community for a few reasons. First of all, it has a really generous free trial. Technically, you can just evaluate it forever, so tons of people get started on it because of the low barrier to entry and just end up sticking with it. Second, it's known for being rock solid and stable, and I can confirm this myself. As I mentioned, I learned it specifically for the most recent Doth tour because I needed a DAW for our backing tracks, plugins, and automations that I knew without a shadow of a doubt would not crash on stage, and it never did. In the stability department, it's unmatched. Third, Reaper is also insanely powerful and customizable.
The thing I like about Reaper is it's so customizable and configurable.
It has very robust support for scripting and automation and a highly engaged community of users who create and share these scripts. The problem is you kind of have to customize it. Right out of the box, the layout is weird and unintuitive. You have to dig into it, download user configurations, and tweak it to get it to work the way you want. This is for the guy who likes to build his own custom PC, work on his own car, and tweak every single setting. It's the DAW equivalent for that kind of person, and if that's you, you will absolutely love it. And if you're not that person, kind of like me, you just want to open the software and get to making music, you probably are going to find it frustrating. Also, it's not like the other DAWs where if you know one, you can pretty much figure the rest out. It's kind of its own thing. It's got its own weird layout and its own weird way of doing things. It's its own beast. And there's still a bunch of other DAWs out there, of course.
Anyone who is anyone knows that Cakewalk is the cleanest sounding DAW out there.
Like, for instance, you've got Ableton Live, which is a monster for electronic music and hip hop. Its ability to stretch, chop, and manipulate samples in real time is incredible, and something Pro Tools can only dream of. But it's not really optimized for recording and editing tons of linear audio tracks, which is why it's not very common in metal. In all the years of Nail the Mix, we've only had one producer use Ableton, and that was for a pop punk session with the band Real Friends. For death metal, it's probably not the best idea.
Hi, I've been on Samplitude for many years now, and I like it. I started to use it because I like the sound it has. The company Magix claims it has a neutral sound. At that time, I tried many different DAWs, FL, Cubase, Logic, and I ended up with Samplitude.
Then you have FL Studio, which used to be called Fruity Loops. It's arguably one of the most popular DAWs in the world, just in terms of sheer user numbers, because it's so easy to get started making beats with it. Soulja Boy famously made Crank That on a cracked copy of Fruity Loops. But again, like Ableton, it's just not designed for the kind of heavy audio workflow that metal production requires. You could technically make a metal song in it, but you probably don't want to.
I have demoed a lot of DAWs, and I end up with different sound in different DAWs. I think like different vendors of plugins has a kind of signature sound. The same goes for DAWs. There will always be a lot of choices when programming. It might affect the sound.
Finally, there are some newer DAWs like Studio One and Bitwig. People who use them seem to love them, and because they're more modern, they've been able to learn from the mistakes of the older programs and have been built from the ground up without decades of old code or technical debt. The main downside is simply that they aren't very popular. That makes it harder to get help or collaborate with people who are likely using something else. You'll have to bounce stems down, which can be a clunky process. If you do happen to choose one of them, you'll likely be the only person you know of who uses it. And here's a final, really important point, like incredibly important. Stock plugins are incredible. People get obsessed with third-party plugins, thinking that they need to spend thousands of dollars to get a pro sound. But the truth is, the stock plugins that come with the major DAWs, Pro Tools, Cubase, Logic, they're fantastic. You can absolutely make a top quality professional mix using only the tools that come with your DAW. We've had pro mixers on Nail the Mix who use mostly stock plugins, and their mixes are crushing. If you took away all of their fancy third-party stuff, they would still deliver amazing mixes because it's not about the tools, it's about the skills. Blah. So what's the verdict? Well, that is up to you. A great mix is the sum of 1,000 little decisions, and the software is just the environment where you make them. The drums are not going to grid themselves. You have to do it or not do it. The guitars aren't going to tune themselves. The mix isn't going to balance itself. The real secret is your skill and your workflow. You need to find the DAW that disappears, the one that works the way your brain works, so you can stop thinking about the software and start thinking about the music. That's the key. Here's one piece of actionable advice. Try them. Most of these DAWs have free trials or really cheap trials. Download them, check them out, spend a week with each, and see which one feels natural to work in, and then just commit and go with it. Are you mostly a songwriter who does a ton of MIDI programming? Maybe Cubase or Logic is your answer. Are you recording full bands all the time and sending sessions to commercial studios? You should probably learn Pro Tools. Do you need something absolutely bomb-proof for a live show and you love to customize every detail? Reaper's your guy. The most important thing is to just pick one and get to work. Stop wasting so much time worrying about which one is best and start creating. If you want to see for yourself that they all can be used to make incredible records, check out Nail the Mix. We've had almost every DAW you can imagine on there, all used to create mixes for some of the biggest albums in rock and metal. Link is in the description. And remember, the tool doesn't make the artist. You do. Now stop watching YouTube and go make some music.